Well, what do we got going on here? It is time to get back to work now on our Malaguti F12. There was so much that happened to the scooter in the previous videos when we went full water cooled setup. We got our radiators all tucked in there. We ended up changing the whole entire electrical system, and we also went with the inner rotor ignition, rewired everything, brand new pipe, all the bits. It rips, it runs perfect, everything is dialed electrical wise, except there's one thing that has been bothering me from the start of this scooter. If you remember in the riding videos when we finished the scooter, I mentioned how bad these back brakes were on this thing. Even with brand new brake pads, brand new brake spring, everything, the drum brakes just are not cutting it for this big of a scooter, this heavy, and this fast of a scooter. Now, these F12s do come already stock with a rear disc brake on certain models. This was the drum brake Minarelli model. There is one with a disc brake model where the engine case actually has a mount back here with the caliper, and obviously it's fully rear disc. And well, we didn't get that model, boys. So we have really crappy drum brakes in here right now. Even with the brand new pads, it's just not cutting it, boys. So I'm very stoked to show you guys this right now. But look what we got here. All the way from Italy, we got ourselves an F12 rear disc wheel. So this is a 12-inch wheel. It was a little more harder to find. I kept running across disc conversions that would work, but they were all 13-inch rear rim, like I have on like my GP1 and everything. So I wanted the 12-inch to match the front, and it's the same spoke style one. Every other one I kept finding was a different spoke style one. I didn't want to run two different wheels or have to buy another front wheel. So we got that, and most importantly, to run that, you need a hub. So this will go on to the spline that normally goes in through the drum, and that will go onto there, which we will then bolt up our rear disc rotor to one side while we bolt up the wheel to the other. Taking a few seconds to remind you guys that right now, every item you purchase on MOPBOYZ.com is one entry into winning this amazing, freshly built vertical Minarelli engine. Stage 6 cylinder, brand new Doppler crank. We got a bunch of stage 6 bits, all brand new in the CVT here with the new vented cover, manifold, and we have a good old Polini CP carb going on here as well. And a bunch of other bits that we'll be throwing on along the journey of this giveaway. Every item you purchase, whether it be a keychain, be a hat, a t-shirt, these sweet Zuma t-shirts, or anything on the website, every single item you buy is one entry into winning this giveaway. The rules and everything will be in the descriptions down below, but you buy 5 items, you get 5 entries into the giveaway. We'll add everybody's entries up ending on August 31st, and we'll use a random number generator between 1 and X amount of numbers, and that lucky chosen winner will get this vertical Minarelli 70cc engine, which will plug right into a pre-bug Zuma or any other scooter that you want to throw in with a little bit of modification. Go down to the description or click here on the screen and grab something from the merch shop to be able to get entered in to winning this engine. Let's continue on with the video, boys. And you know, we had to upgrade. So instead of going with an OEM caliper, we decided to get the Stage 6 4-piston caliper for this bad boy. So that thing looks sweet, and hopefully that sits in there. Hopefully everything clears in there. Most importantly, right here is our adapter. So this adapter is necessary to do this, and I'm really hoping this works because I couldn't find too much online about it. There's not too many builds I saw with this here. So somewhere back here, and that's gonna be holding up our caliper. So we're gonna have to drill a hole in here, maybe TIG weld. We'll see what the best option is. I'm assuming it's threaded, so the best option is probably gonna be to drill the holes, mount that in there, get our caliper on there. We got a lot to do here, boys. We're gonna want to get these wheels painted because this thing right now, as it sits, looks rough. And as you can see, it's kind of like spray painted. So I have singly decided I'm going white wheels on the F12. I think it'll pop a lot, and I think it's gonna look very good on here. We decided on white wheels, so we had to get this bike hung back up again to be able to get the front wheel pulled off and get this thing down to powder coat. So we hung it from the rafters, popped that front wheel off, and then once we got the wheel off, we kind of discovered a little bit of a problem with this front rotor. Basically, all 3 of the Allen head bolts on here were already kind of stripped. What they used to tighten this thing on, but it was literally impossible to get off. Even with a 3-foot breaker bar, it was not coming off without snapping a bolt. I was a little irritated with the fan noise in the last video after editing it, so I went and got myself some DJI mics. So we got these wireless mics now. Hopefully we're dialed there, but it is time to basically strip down the headset here on the Malaguti F12 because we have to basically put a rear master cylinder up here and along with a brake line down all the plastics. So I ended up going with using my GP1 rear disc brakes. I had 2 GP1s and we parted one out. So we got a rear disc brake complete from one of my GP1s. We're also going to be losing this whole control panel here though, because that's connected to the drum brake lever. That means we'll have another gap like we do here over here as well. So we'll have to see how that's going to look. I'm not too sure on that part yet, but all right, boys, we have got some of the parts back from powder coating for the F12, and here's what we're looking like right now. So we have our wheels powder coated in white along with the hub. We got a brand new disc rotor, as you've seen, the caliper, etc., etc. Got our front wheel up here, just a clean gloss white, as you can see. Oh, okay. Just a clean gloss white, as you can see. I think it's gonna look really good against this red here with the white that's on it. I think it's gonna pop. But in order to now get all this figured out, we have to do a few things. So this is the rear caliper mount or adapter or conversion, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see here, it has this perfect little cutout. Well, that perfect little cutout goes in here. It kind of fits right over this little action piece right here. So it'll kind of sit just like that, flush against the case. And we're going to have to find out exactly where it lines up on this side and drill the holes. So here is our hub, which holds on the wheel and the rotor, which this is honestly the most important part for this whole thing right here. So this basically needs to go onto here. But as you can see, this is where your brake shoe goes. I already took out the cam that goes here, the actual one that connects to your cable, which moves. This one's the stationary cam. We're gonna have to cut that back, and I believe we're gonna have to Dremel away some of the case. Definitely have to get rid of that, obviously, but I believe that this will hit somewhere on the cases a little bit. So we're gonna have to figure some stuff out now, boys. I ran my rear brake line, which goes all the way to the front, and we took off all our drum stuff up front. So I basically took my entire setup from my old GP1 that I parted out. Those have rear disc brakes on them on the Piaggio engines. And I took the front master cylinder, which I ended up getting painted flat black, or matte black if you will. So we still got to pull the tape off there, but looks like a brand new master now. Brake line ran all the way up to there, so we could start throwing our master together, kind of get that mounted on there. We could throw the front wheel together, but we are waiting on a new front rotor to come in, because when I had to get mine off, it was the process, boys. I was in a rush to get down to the powder shop before they closed that day, before 4th of July, so I didn't get stuck waiting extra few days or whatever to drop it off. So I wanted to rush down there to get it. All 3 of the rotor head bolts were completely stripped trying to get them off that bike. So I ended up having to Dremel out the bolts, and then I kind of nicked the rotor a little bit, but that's fine. The rotor was pretty scored anyway, so I ordered a new rotor bolts, and those are on the way. There's a decent amount of work still to do. We have to press in all of our wheel bearings into the front one up here. We have to get the tire off the old back rim for the drum brake, and we already have that tire ready to go, so that one's for the front. So we can throw that on and start kind of getting it ready, and hopefully the rest of the parts will show up here in just a couple days. Here is the deal. We got our tires and everything mounted on the wheels. The front one is ready and dialed, but we got our bearings, everything in there. So to make this more accessible, we are going to be throwing the front wheel on now, even though we did not get our new rotor or our new rotor bolts in yet. So basically the front wheel is not gonna have a brake right now. I'm just gonna throw it in so that we can move this scooter outside to then Dremel and drill out the case. White wheels back from powder coat, and they look absolutely amazing. We threw the tires back on, got our wheel bearings back in, and got this scooter basically floating in the air, prepping it ready to get this rear caliper mounted on here. So that's exactly what we did. We got the front fairing thrown back on before we put on the wheel, because I made this mistake before, and then you take it all back off to be able to put that front fairing back on. And then went ahead and slapped the wheel back in with no rotor or anything on that, because we're waiting on some parts to come in for that. So we kind of just put it in a rolling state right now. We got this thing pulled outside so I can work on cutting off this cam that goes for the brake shoe, just because I'm tired of getting pieces of metal all over in the garage and stepping on them every single day. So we're keeping things outside for this and cleaning this thing up, ready to throw the hub on. We got a rotor on here as well, just to kind of see, because the rotor sticks out a decent amount. All right, rotor on it was a bad idea, not gonna lie. Oh yeah, we're gonna be rubbing a lot up there, but everywhere else seems to clear. It's hitting this outer ring, as you can tell, where it's kind of chipping the powder coat all the way around this whole bearing area of the case. So we're gonna have to come in here with the Dremel, bank that in a little bit, Interesting. Dremel that away. Dremel this away a little bit. Then Dremel in here because that's kind of where our bolt's going to go for the caliper mount. Alright boys, after about an hour of dremeling, we have accomplished what we needed to do to clear the rear disc brake hub on the back of this drum case. We had to come in here and basically go around this whole entire thing, getting about 1 millimeter off in diameter. Because of this inner lip that's up here, as you can see, we took the Dremel to it and took a little bit off of here, but this is a lot thinner, so I didn't want to take too much off of there. We also took down our post here, which held the brake pads on, and then Dremeled that down. We drilled the hole and Dremeled this, as well as the bottom hole down here. So we put this on there, as you can see, and on the inner diameter now, down in there. Plenty of room now. Let's make sure everything else works now. So we got our caliper adapter here, which we're gonna find some bolts for now. Get that mounted, get our hub on there with the rotor, and then slide our caliper on and make sure everything lines up. Then of course, throw the back wheel on, bleed the brakes, etc., etc. But we got to make sure everything we just modified actually works. This disc brake setup was a little bit more than I anticipated on how it actually works, but I'm not mad about it. It's definitely some good quality. I just definitely thought it was something a little easier to do. But those bolts will be a perfect perfect setup. So as you can see, that's how we're sitting now with our caliper mount. So it's sitting flush back there, and then it's bolted in up here on this side with those hardware. So Dremel doesn't look too amazing, don't worry, I didn't go and fine touch it. You'll never see this. And for the next step, we're actually going to throw on our rotor right now to verify everything lines up. Truth, boys. Alright, we've been going in on the F12 right now, and I got the rear master cylinder on here. It took a while to make this thing work out, but we also had a little mishap here with the cover, so I'll show you guys that in a second. But hooking up the brake line, hooking up the brake light line. Let me show you where I messed up right here. This was a dumb mistake. This was one of those wake up and get in the garage, and was not thinking yet. So basically what happened was I set this on here. I figured out I had to cut it right here, right? So I drew a line. I took the headset back off. When I flipped it over to trace out where I was going to cut, I took the reservoir cover and I set it on there. And for some reason, I set it with that line being the top mark, when that line is really supposed to be the bottom of the reservoir mark. So I cut out the square below it, and then I set it on here. I realized when I set it on here, this is where I cut out. So then I had to cut it higher up, and it looks absolutely terrible, but I already planned on getting the correct one for the rear disc model anyways, so I was just kind of cutting this temporarily, yeah, it looks absolutely terrible. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very, very mad with how that part turned out, but it'll be fixed eventually, or we might just have to go naked bars at this point, boys. What do you guys think? I don't know. I had to shave off a lot more than I initially anticipated. We have our caliper mount here, but the caliper was hitting once it slid all the way down on the mount against the actual case right here on the brake drum. So had to shave that down a couple millimeters, and everything does now, in fact, with the rotor on, fit back here. So we're looking good on that part. Now we'll be able to mount everything. We got our brake line. This was the first real test at having everything pretty much assembled. So we Loctited in our caliper mount and we slid the hub right on. Now that everything fits and everything clears on the hub and the rotor against the case, it was time to mount everything, through our caliper on, through our brake line on, and let's get this thing figured out. We got everything set up for the disc brake. We just got to bleed that. But while I'm in here and I want this to dry overnight, if you remember when we finished this scooter and got it running, we had this stage 6 exhaust leaking literally out of every single crevice. Like, it was unlike I've ever seen before with any used SUNY pipe I get or anything. It was leaking out this back part. Even with the sealant I did use in all of these O-ring gaskets, it was leaking everywhere. I saw a bunch of people mention in the comments below that they have the same issue when they run stage 6 pipes, that they are just prone to leaking all over the place. So with that being said, I have took it upon myself to fully disassemble this exhaust, and I'm gonna seal it pretty much every single crevice. I think it was even leaking out of here last time. All right, boys, so we have been going in on this rear disc brake, and let me tell you, I just spent about 2.5 hours bleeding this rear disc brake. It was a absolute pain, but we ended up doing a vacuum bleed on it, hooking up what I used for my car, which is like to the air compressor, vacuum bleed it. But with that being said, it is now bled, and we have a disc brake on here. So we're gonna get the wheel on there now and actually test it. But I'm very sad about how this headset turned out. I can't get over it. I had a piece right here that was connected. I ended up having a brake fluid leak, hit that, and just literally just disintegrated the plastic. You know how brake fluid is. So that was no good. I mentioned that we were waiting on some parts to come in for the front because we didn't have the new front disc on here. And well, bada bing, we got the new front disc and we got some hardware to throw it on there. Just gonna figure out if I want to use the button head bolts or these flat style ones once I put it on and kind of get the look for it. But gonna take that front wheel back off now. That's why I got it hung up. And we'll get that on there, get the rear wheel on there now, and we should be all good. Looks absolutely sick now. I'm not gonna lie, this looks tough. We're gonna get a couple brackets and be able to mount that brake line. So for about the 5th time this week, it was time to take the front wheel off again on the F12. This time, and hopefully the last time, with finalizing everything we need with the new rotor and the new rotor bolts. So we threw the wheel up on the workbench with our new rotor, slapped in some rotor bolts, and got this thing tightened up and thrown back on the bike. Hopefully completely finalizing the front end of this so we can carry on with finishing the rear disc brake. We got the rear wheel on there now with the disc brake, and everything is ready to go. We got our actual brakes bled, everything is fitting now. I had to do a lot of minor adjustments that I didn't even film because there's just so many little things that just kept hitting and everything had to be adjusted. I had to clearance a bunch of miscellaneous parts, both now with the new front rotor and with this back setup. So we finally got it. And now we need to come in here and clean up these white wheels, which are gonna be maintenance. Let me tell you, I can already tell just by the little bit of fingerprints. We're going to be putting our exhaust on now, and like I said, I resealed everything on our exhaust, so hopefully this time we have no leaks. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that right now. Our good old exhaust. On the Sunni one, there's a double O-ring on the part where the header meets the pipe. On this one, it's literally just a slip-on, so I'm running Honda Bond on it. That's where I had a big leak too, is down there. It sealed both seams and all the little connections in there. This thing, I'm telling you right now, this thing better not leak ever again. Well, this is my Malaguti F12. We have completely changed this bike since we originally got it. When we originally got it, it was a bone stock 50cc scooter. We went 70cc. We went and then changed that to a liquid cooled. We have stepped this thing up to literally max prestige at this point. If you saw last time when we rewired the entire bike, went inner rotor ignition, we now have this thing set up to an 18 volt conversion where it powers this water pump. Simply a drill battery drill. All right, boys, as you can tell, we got our rear disc working on there. Thing grabs phenomenal now. I don't know if you can just tell. That's gonna do it for this one, boys. We're gonna get the F12 tuned up and more riding in the next one. I will see you guys in the next video.